I am back. Mr. Cozy is back with another story. I'm going to let you take one guess as to what this story is going to be about. What insect is on the screen and what might we be learning about today? Buzz, buzz. Oh, you startled me. I'm so busy that I nearly forgot where I was. I'm a honeybee, and I'm delighted to be here to tell you a little bit about my everyday world. Honeybees are quite social. Humans are social too, which means they live together in communities or groups instead of living alone. Social insects live in communities too. Most insects are solitary, living alone their entire lives. They are alone when they hatch from their eggs, they search for food alone, and they find their shelter alone. There are thousands of different kinds of bees on the planet, and most of them live solitary lives. But honeybees are different. We live in organized communities and depend on one another to live, solving problems as a team. We gather and share food, build nests together, cooperate to raise our young, and protect one another from enemies. Honeybee communities are also called colonies. Say colonies. Our colonies are made up of 20,000 or more bees. We like to make our nests, our beehives, in dark places. That's why you often see pictures of us buzzing about in trunks of hollow trees. People use beehive boxes to raise honeybees for honey. Perhaps you've seen these boxes in a field or a backyard before. Wherever we nest, we build honeycombs. This amazing structure of layered cells is made of a waxy substance that we use to make honey, and we produce this substance in our abdomens. Do you remember where the abdomen is on an insect? Can you spot a pattern among the cells in this honeycomb? So how many sides does each one of these cells have? If you look real closely, you could even count if you really wanted to. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And each one of these honeycombs has 6 sided. Pretty cool, huh? What are the purpose of these cells? These cells are very important for our lives. Listen carefully and I'll tell you how they are important to the many jobs we perform. Remember, I told you we are very social insects and very busy. There is a lot of work to be done, and each bee in the colony has its own job to do. Every honeybee colony has a mother called the queen bee. Not Beyonce, but an actual queen bee. The queen is always the largest bee in the hive, and she has only one job to do. She's got to lay eggs, and she's got to lay a lot of them. She must produce more queens for other hives and make sure there are enough worker bees to do the work in her own hive. The queen bee flies from the nest to mate with male bees called drones. Once a drone has mated with the queen bee, it has done its job and it dies. Drones cannot sting because they don't have stingers. When the queen returns, she lays her eggs, sometimes more than 1,000 a day. Where do you think the queen bee lays all these eggs? Right, she returns to the comb to lay them in their cells. The queen then pushes tiny eggs, no bigger than a pinhead, from her abdomen into the waxy cells of the honeycomb, 1 egg to each cell. In just a few days, the eggs hatch. The larvae get fed pollen by one of the hive's female worker bees. The larvae grow and eventually spin silky cocoons. Worker bees quickly seal over the waxy cell of the honeycomb, protecting and developing pupa inside each cocoon. Does this process sound familiar? It should. The bees are undergoing a change. What kind of change is this? Do you remember what it's called? When they emerge from their cocoons, they will chew their way out of the cells, emerging as full-grown adults. When a bee discovers a particularly good source of nectar, it returns to the hive to share its information with the other foragers. First, it lets the other foragers smell the pollen so they can identify the type of flower. Then it performs a complicated and special waggle dance as it circles about in a pattern like a figure eight. It wags its abdomen as it moves through the middle of its dance. The bee's repeated movements, circling and waggling its abdomen, tell the others exactly how far away and in which direction from the sun the flowers are located. A bee that thinks she has found a really good flower patch does the waggle dance with lots of energy. So imagine one of your friends in class, and imagine they come back from the bathroom and they say they found a very, very, very big pot of candy. My class knows I love starbursts. So what they would do is they'd come back to class, and they know they can't tell everybody where the starbursts are because they know I would go to eat them. So they have to do a special waggle dance in order to communicate with the other kids where the starbursts are. Where do you suppose the bees put the nectar when they return to the hive? They make the nectar into honey and store it in honey cells, the cells that are not being used for developing bees. The honey is an important food source for the bees. While moving from flower to flower, worker bees rub up against the flower a yellow powder called pollen. Honeybees will pack the pollen into baskets of hair on their hind legs, and they will carry it with them. Pollen is used to feed the larvae, but this pollen is important stuff for another reason. Plants need pollen from other plants in order to make new seeds. This is called pollination. Honeybees are important because they carry the pollen between flowers of the same species or kinds. Now, I'd like to introduce to you a relative of mine. This is a paper wasp. Look closely at its body. What do we have in common? Well, we each have a head, we each have a thorax with 6 legs, an abdomen, an exoskeleton, and wings. And this particular wasp, the paper wasp, is also a social insect just like me. Some wasps are solitary though, but the black and gold ones nearly always live in societies. Like honeybees, wasps live in large groups. And what are these groups called? Yep, colonies. Each colony has a leader, a female wasp who is bigger than all the other wasps, who spends most of her time laying eggs. Sound familiar? Do you remember what she's called? She is called the queen. Like honeybees, wasps build their nests. They build them in many different places, usually hidden and difficult to see, that are protected from rain and bad weather, such as under the eaves of houses or in protected areas on trees. Wasp nests have a very different kind of look from beehives on the outside, but their paper-like structures are similar to ours on the inside. We'll take a look at how paper wasps build their nests. The process begins with the queen. She finds plant fibers, which are dry grasses and old birds, boards, fence posts, and pulls them apart with her strong jaws. She softens the pieces with her spit inside her mouth and chews them into a paste that looks and feels a little like paper. She then sticks a dab of this paste to whatever surface she has chosen for the nest. The queen adds a tough stem to support the whole nest and begins attaching cone-like chambers to it. These clusters of 6-sided chambers open downward to keep the rain out. Pretty impressive for just insects, right? As the queen forms each chamber, she deposits an egg in each one. The egg develops into larvae. The queen wasp takes care of the first larvae herself. She leaves the nest to find food, capturing and chewing other insects into mush to feed her young. About 2 weeks after hatching, the larvae enter the pupa stage, spinning cocoons inside each cell and covering the cells with silk. These sealed cells break open a few weeks later, and out come adult wasps with long legs, strong wings, and large eyes, and those pesky little stingers they have. Most of these newly hatched wasps are female workers who begin to take over the queen's work right away. They hunt for food and feed the larvae, clean and repair the cells, and guard the nest. Others fan the nest with their wings by beating them repeatedly, and some even spread water over the combs to keep the nests cool. While the workers enlarge the nest for more and more wasps, the queen goes back to laying eggs. By summer's end, many of the workers have died. There are often 250 or more cells in each paper wasp's papery nest. The wasps that do emerge at the end of summer are no longer female worker wasps. Instead, they are new queens and males. The new queens find shelter in protected places, in attic walls, inside logs, under bushes, where they will hibernate all winter. When spring comes, the new queens come out from hiding and begin to build nests for their new colony of wasps. All wasps abandon their nests in fall, using them for one season only. When fall comes and leaves drop from a tree, look up and see if you can spot one of the papery apartment houses dangling from under a roof or partially hidden behind a wall. Next time you'll find out how some other social insects build their nests. Until then, think about what those social insects might be. And here's a hint. As always, if you have any questions, please contact me, Miss Master, Miss Benson. And if you have any starbursts, now that I'm thinking about them, please don't contact them, just contact me. Goodbye.